What's up, everybody? Nathan here, and today I want to talk to you guys about Dusk Dawn. Before I do, let me just say that I'm sorry you don't see any videos from me anymore. I'll try to make some of these off-the-cuff videos when I get a chance, but just busy with life, trying to stay in Switzerland, lots of stuff going on, other interests like photography that take up a bunch of my time. Yeah, so okay, that's what that is. But Dusk Dawn, I want to talk about this card because I get a lot of people that ask me about it. Hey, what do you think about Dusk Dawn? Is it actually any good? And, I see a lot of lists, people not running it. And I want to talk about why I like it, why I run it, and how I feel that it fits in the deck and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so first off, let's talk about Retribution of the Meek. As you probably know, I've been playing Geist of St. Traff decks for a long time. And I feel like I'm always kind of searching for how to give the deck more card advantage, how to do this, how to do that. And, most of it's bad. But I'm always like searching, I'm always trying to make the deck the best that it can be. And in one of those searches, a long time ago, I found Retribution of the Meek and just felt like, man, I really wish we had this card. Because mainly I was looking for during Eldrazi Winter. I was like, because this is what I thought, this is the tool that we needed. A one-sided Wrath that kills all the Eldrazi, but not your Geist. It gets you up on cards. It kills all of their stuff. It lets you attack with Geist. It's going to be great. Obviously, it's just a legacy-only card, and we didn't have anything like that in Modern, so I let it go. When they printed Dusk Dawn, I was like, hey, it's the modern version of... it's the modern version of Retribution of the Meek. And then I realized that, I was slowly moving more and more towards Queller, and I was like, hey, it's even better because it just doesn't kill any of our threats. It's a one-sided Wrath with Geist. That's totally ridiculous. And so at the outset, I was really excited about it. But let me just talk a little bit about the theory behind why you want this card. So normally when you're playing like a reactive draw-go deck, which this deck is until you're playing Geist, you normally can stay up on the tempo game and then sometimes get ahead of the tempo game. Like when you're playing against creature decks, if they're playing a creature on their turn and then you're killing it at the end of their turn and saying draw go on your turn, you're not necessarily getting ahead on tempo. I mean, you might be, right, if they play something that costs 2 mana and you kill it with Lightning Bolt. But what I mean is, like, card for card, you're sort of at parity with them. Sometimes you could get in situations where you're able to go like bolt their creature, snap bolt their creature at the end of their turn, and maybe they took them 2 turns to play the creature, so now you're getting ahead. But when you play Geist, you sometimes you kind of open yourself up to take a step back there. Let's say they play a Tarmogoyf and you only have a Lightning Bolt and you have a Geist, but you want to go and you can't kill the Tarmogoyf. So you play your Geist anyway and they follow it up with another Tarmogoyf. Now you're in this awkward situation because now you have 2 creatures potentially to kill before you can attack with your Geist. And this is where Dusk Dawn can be really good. And this also happens against Eldrazi Tron, which is what the deck is really for, because they can accelerate mana out so they can deploy multiple large threats quickly. It's nice to be able to say, okay, I'm going to play this Geist, and I know that no matter what they do, I'm going to be able to clean up the board, not only gain some card advantage, make back like maybe the tempo that I've lost, but then be able to swing with the creature, with Geist of St. Traff, rather. And this card is primarily in here for the Eldrazi Tron matchup, because what we want against Eldrazi Tron is a sweeper. The counters are important, but less so, because things like Karn and whatnot, they don't have as many of those. I still keep my counters in, and Cryptic Command's really good in the matchup. But what we really need is an efficient way to get rid of a bunch of creatures. We need more ways to kill big creatures, and ideally we want that way. We want that sweeper to not kill our creatures, because we are also, albeit less so than a deck like Eldrazi Tron, we are a creature deck. We kill primarily with Geist of St. Traff and Spellquellers. And so the fact that that's a one-sided Wrath is just huge. It lets us catch back on tempo. It's a one-sided Wrath, so like all the time that we spent committing to the board, we don't lose that, but they do. And that effect, while maybe not as apparent, is just ridiculous. If over the course of the game you've deployed a couple, like let's say you've deployed a Geist and a Queller, let's say the Queller's lived, they end up having like a Reality Smasher and something else on the battlefield. Being able to just dusk it away and attack with the creatures is huge. And so that's really the main reason. It's also really good against green-black X decks. And then it's good against Shadow, but less so. But that's the thing I want to say about Shadow is that's not really what this card is for. What you have for Shadow is your Path to Exiles, your Burn 'em Out plan, your Dispel backup, which I kind of want 2 Dispels in the deck, but this is where I'm at so far. I will talk about the deck just a little bit at the end here, and your Celestial Purge. So you the other thing that I need to mention is you don't need the Dusk Dawn, the Dusk effect, the Wrath effect as much against Shadow because they're more threat light. They're much less about flooding the board with big things than they are about, which they can play a couple Death Shadows and it's annoying, but they're less about flooding the board and more about they're like a Delver deck. They want to get their big threat in there and then use their card selection to make sure that they have protection. And so for me, I want to have ways to kill their creatures, but then also ways to fight their protection. And, if they play a 1-mana Death Shadow and have a 1-mana counter spell that I can't think of the name all of a sudden up as backup, you're basically playing the same game as them when you have your Path to Exile for their 1-mana creature and your 1-mana counter spell. And so if you can trade evenly with them, it's completely fine. But where you can potentially gain an advantage then is if you can kill their first Death Shadow and then have a Cryptic Command or preferably a Logic Knot to counter it on the way back down, then you're really doing great. And so my point is anyway, you're fighting the Death Shadow deck a little bit differently than you're fighting the Eldrazi deck, and you need a sweeper against Eldrazi more than you do against Death Shadow. So when people say things like, well, do you miss Verdict against Death Shadow? It's well, sure, I do, but if against Death Shadow, the game just plays out a little bit more differently. What I really want to do against Death Shadow is kill their first creature and get a Geist in play, because Geist is probably your best card in that matchup. Because then they have to think about, can they really attack? I've played a Geist and had somebody play a Gurmag Angler and then just say go. And if they're not attacking with their creatures, then their deck's not working. If they're having to block, and then you get to do things like, make them fight over your creature, and that's just not what their deck's really designed to do. I mean, you can get in fights at the end of their turn with things while having your creature in play, so that if they tap out, you can plan to say, if I lose this battle, then I'm going to go Snap Path on my turn and attack with Geist of Saint-Traft. They're going to be so low at that point that I can easily burn them out. So anyway, the matchup plays a bit differently, but I do bring Dusk Dawn in. It's just going to be obviously harder to resolve, but I have successfully blown up against Jund Shadow a couple of Tarmogoyfs. I've blown up things against Death Shadow. I mean, it can happen, especially if you're well, I know I have this Dusk in reserve, but I'm at the end of their turn, I'm going to go Path or Snap Path or whatever it is, and if it doesn't resolve, then I'm just going to play the Dusk Dawn. And again, what you're really hoping there is, okay, so they let me play my Snapcaster Mage, they countered my Path to Exile, now they're tapped out because they're threat light, I play Dusk Dawn, my Snapcaster Mage lives, their dude died, attack it for 2. Anyway, the last thing I'll say about Dusk Dawn is that I kind of think it's a meta card, right? I mean, obviously most things are meta cards, but what I mean is right now I think it's good, mainly because of Eldrazi. If Eldrazi was not a deck, I don't think that I would be running Dusk Dawn, probably. The other thing I want to say is Anger of God, Supreme Verdict, whatnot. These are just here for decks that run a lot of big creatures, which we have a little bit more problems with. But decks with small creatures, I don't really feel like I need to run Anger of the Gods, as an example. I have a Staticaster, I have 3 Electrolyzes, I have Helixes, and both small creatures are not the problem. If I do not need to overload on ways to kill small creatures. That's what the deck is already good at. What I need is a little help with bigger creatures. And so I don't need an Anger of the Gods. I'd rather have this than an Anger to me. I'd rather have this than a Verdict for the reasons I said before. And so on paper, I really like Dusk Dawn. How's Dusk Dawn been in practice? It's done exactly what you think it would do. It kills big creatures. That's it. I have killed a reality. I've had a Geist on the table and killed a Reality Smasher and a Thought-Knot Seer. And then attacked with Geist, and of course I won that game. Like I said, you know what I haven't done? I have never cast Dawn. Never, not once. It's just never come up. And the decks, but I would be running this card even if it didn't have Dawn. The Dawn is just a bonus. The one-sided Wrath, the Dusk side is good enough for me. So one of these days I'd like to hope to cast Dawn to great effect. It just hasn't come up yet. The games are usually over before I'm on that plan. But in theory, I mean, especially against something like, if Jund was king, actually, like if Jund was as big as Eldrazi Tron right now, I probably would run this. Because this, the thing is, they're going to take all your Snapcaster Mages out of your hand anyway. So if they get a couple of Tarmogoyfs in play and you draw this later and wrath them all away, you're playing this crazy long game with them anyway, then Dawn probably be really great. So again, the one-sided Wrath effect, catching back up on tempo, I think Dusk Dawn is great. And it's been totally good. And it's been just as good as Supreme Verdict in practice. I don't feel like I need Supreme Verdict that much right now anyway. Like I said, we bring this in against Death Shadow, but it's not the primary way we're fighting them. Against Merfolk, again, we don't have problems killing small creatures. Supreme Verdict would be nice against Merfolk, but that, again, small creatures we pretty much have a handle on. This is a list I played to a 5-0 yesterday. I don't know what this Elspeth's going to be. I don't want it to be Elspeth. I don't think we need it. I think the Dusk Dawn is what we're choosing to do against Eldrazi. What I kind of want it to be, actually, is this. I don't know if it's good. Maybe I'll play the next league with this guy. I just like it. Anyway, that's it. I wanted to talk about Dusk Dawn. Talk to you guys later. Bye.